Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video, we are going to be talking about a similarity that 5 characters share in Red Dead Redemption 2 that you probably didn't know about. So this is sort of a follow-up to a video I did the other day where we talked about Lenny and Bill and Dutch and Javier and how they were the only characters in the Red Dead Redemption series that died outside of a cutscene. Well, today we're going to be talking about some more characters that share a really common, cool interest that, again, you might not have known about. And that is Dutch, John, Jack, Abigail, and Uncle. Now, I know what you might be saying. Well, some of those characters are going to be related to each other. You know, Abigail and John are married. Jack is Abigail and John's son. But what's the relationship between all 5 of them? And what is the thing that they all happen to share? Well, that is that they are the only characters in the Red Dead Redemption franchise to appear in 3 time periods. And Jack Marston is the only one in the entire series to appear in 4 time periods. So let's start with the individual characters first. We'll begin with Uncle. So Uncle appears in 1899, as you guys know, in Red Dead Redemption 2, in 1907 in Red Dead Redemption 2 Epilogue, and in 1911 when Red Dead Redemption takes place. So in case you guys were unaware, Red Dead Redemption 2 has 2 time periods, 1899 and 1907, and Red Dead Redemption also has 2 time periods, 1911 and 1914. So to give you guys a little bit of background on Uncle, we don't actually know how old he is. We just know that he was born sometime between 1849 in Ohio and is one of the oldest members of the Vanderlyn gang. Now, what's also interesting about Uncle is he seems to be one of the few characters that, even though progresses through time, doesn't seem to age. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I can't tell the difference between 1899 Uncle and 1907 Uncle. He just doesn't seem to age. I don't even know how old he is, but he doesn't age. Now, some more information on Uncle. He was actually 9 years old when both of his parents died, and he actually was married twice before 1899. And then, of course, we know that he joined the Vanderlyn gang, and then he ends up joining the Marstons, which is why he's around in 1911 when John returns to his ranch after successfully dealing with Javier and Bill Williamson. So that right there is Uncle. The next character is Abigail Marston, who we obviously saw in 1899, who we saw in 1907, and then, of course, in 1911. Now, the reason we don't see her in 1914 is because she actually dies at the age of 37 from unknown causes. Now, I don't know if we will ever know why she actually died or what was the cause of it, but we don't actually see her in the epilogue. Now, one thing I do want to talk about, since Uncle and Abigail both appear in this, is Undead Nightmare. So some of you guys are going to say, well, wait a minute. We see Abigail and we see Uncle in Undead Nightmare. However, it's important to consider that the events of Undead Nightmare are not part of the same canon as Red Dead Redemption. So Undead Nightmare is sort of like a separate branch of the RDR series. It's not part of the same timeline. So that's something you need to keep in mind right there. So that is Abigail. Abigail, I guess, ages from 1899 to 1911, although it's kind of hard to compare because, remember, that was Red Dead Redemption. That was 9 years ago. That was on a different system. Graphics were way different. She has a different voice actor, so that also might have played a part in the way she looked. But anyways, that is the second character today. The next character today is obviously John Marston. So John Marston appears in 1899, 1907, and then in 1911. And I guess you could say that John ends up aging. Again, it's kind of hard to tell, especially because in Red Dead Redemption in 1911, it's a different game, different system, different time period in which Rockstar was making games. So it is a little hard to tell. But I think John actually got a little bit older. Honestly, I think the biggest change in John Marston isn't physically, it's more mentally and emotionally and how he ultimately matures We saw in 1899 he was, kind of immature, especially about his responsibilities of being a family man, and certainly by Red Dead Redemption, that has completely changed. Like, he wants nothing more than to just get back to his ranch at Beecher's Hope. Whereas in Red Dead Redemption 2, it was kind of the opposite. He never wanted to be around Abigail and Jack all that much in the beginning. And even in the epilogue and sort of the footage you're seeing right now, he's even struggling just doing simple things like fishing and talking to his son. So I think that's the biggest change that John ultimately sees from 1899 to 1911. Now, also, just like Abigail and Uncle, John does appear in Undead Nightmare. Now, the difference with John in Undead Nightmare is he was buried with holy water. So he returns as an undead with a man's soul, which allows the player to still play as him. So technically, John Marston does exist in 1914, but again, because Undead Nightmare is a part of a different canon, different storyline, it's not something we are going to focus on. So now let's move on to Dutch. Dutch is the fourth character that makes an appearance in all three of these timelines. Again, 1899, 1907, and 1911. And I feel like he makes the biggest changes from 1899 to 1911. I feel like he ages the most. I feel like his appearance changes. When we see Dutch in 1899, he's always well kept, well groomed. He has a short mustache, shorter hair. When we see him in 1907, the only time we see him in the final mission of the game, his hair is much longer. He has a bigger, thicker beard. He seems to have more wrinkles on his forehead, bags under his eyes. Now, that could be because he was, living on a freezing mountain on top of Mount Hagen, but he still definitely looks much older. And then in 1911, you can see that he's lost sort of the beard, but then he has gained more like gray hair. He seems to be older, a little bit more fragile, doesn't move as well or as quickly, which would make sense because that's a long time. I mean, 1899 to 1911, 12 years. A lot can happen in 12 years, especially when you're around Dutch's age. So again, he is one of those characters that appears. Similarly to John, I think the biggest change that Dutch undergoes is his mental state. Like, throughout the entire campaign of Red Dead Redemption 2, we start to see him go more and more and more insane. But then in the epilogue, he makes the very smart decision to meet Micah at the top of the mountain. He ultimately tricks Micah, shoots him, sort of gets his revenge, and then walks off. But then we see in Red Dead Redemption, the insanity has sort of come back. He tries to start his own gang, and then he ends up trying to go after John. So Dutch's mental frame is so confusing. And that's one of the biggest changes that happens throughout the three time periods that he's in. And interestingly enough, Dutch actually doesn't appear in Undead Nightmare, so we don't even have to consider him as being a part of that. And our final character today is Jack Marston. And Jack Marston is the only character in Red Dead Redemption that appears in 4 different time zones, which is really cool. So in 1899, we see Jack as a very, very young boy. I think he's 5 or 6 years old. In 1907, we see him as sort of a young kid, I think it's 10 or 11 or 12. In 1911, we would see him as a 13, 14, 15-year-old. And then by 1914, he would be on the edge of being a young adult, 18, 19, around then. So we really do get to see the full transformation of Jack Marston. He's one of the few characters where we really do get to see this. And by the end, he does look very similar to his father, which is really cool. So who knows if we will see any other characters added to this list. The only way we would is if Rockstar did some sort of DLC or expansion for Red Dead Redemption 2, where we either went beyond 1907 or whether we went before 1899. I would imagine going before 1899 would be the most likely here. You could explore Arthur's time before Blackwater, the gang, before they picked up characters like Micah, Charles Smith. Maybe we would get to see the likes of characters like Davy and Mac and Jenny. That would be super neat. So hopefully that's something Rockstar does, but that is a cool little fact that you might not have known about these 5 characters. Jack Marston, John Marston, Abigail Marston, Dutch, and Uncle are the only characters to appear in 3 time periods, with Jack being the only one to appear in all 4. So a cool little fact you might not have known about. But anyways, that's all the information that I've got for you guys in this video today. Hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave a like rating on this video. That'd be awesome. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new or you like daily Red Dead Redemption 2 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.